Humanity is at a turning point. We are already seeing the results of catastrophic climate change. Peoples are being displaced, finite resources are under even greater pressure, habitat and biodiversity loss is accelerating at an unprecedented pace, all of which increases the likelihood of conflict. Put simply, the climate action we take right now will determine how long we have left. If we want to live in a more peaceful and sustainable world, then we need to protect people, our planet, and wildlife. At Peace One Day, we want to inform, inspire, and engage a global audience with stories of hope. And Peace Day, the 21st of September, is now one of 4 opportunities each year to come together as one to address these critical issues. We now produce 4 live global digital experiences throughout the year, at the turn of every season, encouraging dialogue and setting out action points towards a more just, equal, diverse, inclusive, peaceful, and sustainable world. But that's not how it all started. My name's Jeremy Gilley. I'm an independent documentary filmmaker. In 1998, with a few committed friends, I began documenting my journey to establish the first ever annual day of global ceasefire and non-violence. For 3 years, I built the case for the day's creation. 20 years ago this year, in September 2001, UN member states unanimously adopted a day of ceasefire and non-violence on the UN International Day of Peace, fixed as the 21st of September annually.
Was originally brought to our attention by a UK-based organisation, Peace One Day.
It is so decided.
Next, I wanted to prove Peace Day could work in a conflict zone. In 2007, in Afghanistan, Peace Day agreements between all parties, including the Taliban, allowed 10,000 health workers to vaccinate 1.4 million children against polio on the day. And through awareness initiatives and strategic partnerships, over 1.4 billion people now know about Peace Day, with millions involved in peaceful action. Our new target is to make 3 billion aware by 2025. Welcome to the Peace One Day live global digital experience. Peace One Day responded creatively to the COVID-19 pandemic with the live global digital experience. And we're now focusing our activities on 4 interconnected calendar dates. 21 March, Anti-Racism Live. 21 June, Climate Action Live. 21 September, Peace Day Live. And 21 December, Space Transformers Live, giving a voice to the young changemakers working towards a more peaceful and sustainable world. For more information on this new direction for Peace One Day and to become part of all our live global digital experiences throughout the year, please visit peaceoneday.org and follow us on social media.